Welcome back to the Celtics Nation Rise podcast, episode 53. I'm your host, Griffin Aldrich. Alongside me is my co host, Seamus Zarlingo and Daniel Miguel. And today, it's been a minute. So that's why you guys got to be subscribed because it's been so hectic. We've had the draft, we've had breaking news. Geez, it's a Friday when we're recording. We usually record on Wednesdays. So that's why you guys got to subscribe because the episodes are going to be crazy. We'll have breaking news if any breaking news comes out, but I don't think the next podcast will be till Wednesday then. So I think we'll kind of get back into the regular routine until chaos starts again. But some breaking news went on since the last time we were on. Holiday and Porzingis are no longer on the team. Well, we did the draft podcast, obviously, with Coach AJ, and we broke that news during that. But since recording last episode, what was it, 50, I think? Because I think 52 and 51 were both special episodes. Since then, though, no Holiday, no Porzingis, and we have three new players, too, from the draft. So a lot to break down. Before we go in depth into the trades, we'll start off with the trades and then go with our draft picks, though. How are you guys feeling morale-wise as Celtics fans? Are you guys hurt, happy? How are you feeling? We'll talk about the trades a little more, but Seamus, we'll start off with you. Morale-wise, where are you at?
Well, I'm glad you did episode 50 to commemorate the championship run and the season prior before the transactions went down because it felt perfect, right? It was like episode 50, commemorate that moment, and then all of a sudden, Porzingis and Holiday, they're out the door. So it was almost like the last special of Porzingis and Holiday, right? Now we're going to talk about Porzingis and Holiday a lot in the future, regardless, because of their immortalization into Celtics Nation, winning the title, the 18th banner in Boston. I got to say, the move, it's going to be a gut punch to Celtics Nation, thinking of all the great memories we've gained in only 2 seasons with Holiday and Porzingis. That being said, the moves in which were made are going to set up the Celtics to further make championship runs in the future, and that's important. So when we're holding up the next trophy, right? Hopefully it's in the back half of the 2020s, right? When the Celtics are holding up their next trophy, the thought should be the reason they were able to get to this point is because they moved Porzingis and Holiday. And it's the same conversation with Marcus Smart, right? It's the same conversation with Marcus Smart, Grant Williams, Robert Williams, Malcolm Brogdon. You needed to move those guys in order to go attain Drew Holiday and Kristaps Porzingis, who eventually led us to the title. But that's where the Celtics are right now. They're in the boat of asset accumulation. They're not in the realm of installing championship pieces right now. They're in the space of rearranging the pieces to eventually mobilize to attain the championship installations yet again. And that's the bottom line with this Porzingis and Holiday move is the players in return, people aren't going to be too excited about. I understand Anthony Simons, people are definitely going to like him, but Niang, the former enemy of the Celtics, I feel as if hometown New England kid, going to
Well,
be he's gonna be loved in Boston eventually. If he does in fact play, could be rerouted elsewhere. We don't know, but if he does in fact play, I think people are gonna get to like him. He has a little bit of edge, and the Celtics lacked that the last 2 seasons. Now Niang brings it into Boston, and I believe the moves not very gaudy for the Celtics, not a Porzingis Holiday level move, but that's where the Celtics are with their moves right now. It's about asset accumulation and the rearranging of pieces to get under that second apron to alleviate themselves of all these restrictions in which hampered them from building a team into the future. Now the Celtics, they alleviate themselves of those restrictions, and that's the big thing in these trades. It's not only the players you're getting back, it's the restrictions you're lifting off yourself to make
exactly.
other moves out in the field and in the market. So that's the big thing if you're looking at it from a Celtics perspective. However, Celtics Nation, they're going to be hurting this season. It's going to be I think it's going to be a fun season because we're not expected to do anything. When you don't own any expectations, it's very easy to go over expectations and play with the little house money. I shouldn't say it's easy, but it's that is a path in which the Celtics can take if they're good next year.
Yep.
But otherwise, right now, people are probably a
Hurt.
little side, a little. They're probably side eyeing the Celtics offseason a little bit, but it's one of those off seasons that will make sense in the long run.
Well, it's like with the fan series now, it's like hopes were high before, but it's going to be interesting to see where we go for the rest of the summer with the fan series, how fans are going to take these trades. But before Daniel, you go too, I have to bring it up because you already mentioned it, Seamus. The minivan is heading to Boston. Yep, the minivan is like, all right, we're driving from Atlanta to Boston now, from Lawrence, Massachusetts. So Georges Niang again, hometown kid. So he's in his hometown. You mentioned that, but not Seamus. Daniel, how are you feeling now after these trades? Obviously, we'll get into it again, but morale wise, where are you at? Are you hurt? What's going on, Daniel?
I mean, we all knew it was going to be like I wouldn't say a lackluster season, but like less of a season from the Boston Celtics after Tatum's injury. And after these two trades, I like Simmons coming onto our team. I think he offers a lot offensively. Defensively, we'll be looking at like less because again, no Holiday, who led our defensive stats for the past two seasons together with White, and obviously no Tatum. So again, we're lacking a little bit defensively, but I think offensively, Simmons has a lot to offer. Now I'm not completely set on Niang. I don't know how I feel about that deal yet, but right now um, I hope he's gonna be rerouted. That's what I'm gonna say about the Niang trade. I don't have much hope in him. I don't have much faith, especially what he's been doing to the Celtics for the past seasons. And I don't know how it's gonna. If he stays, I don't know how it's gonna go with Brown because those two also have like a bit of a formidable beef going on. So I don't know how they're gonna settle that in the locker room. I mean, they will have to settle it for the betterment of the team, but right now, I'm not feeling too good about that Niang trade, but I like Simmons on the team. I like the picks we had, especially Amari Williams. So, yeah, about the trades, I'm feeling okay about it. Definitely better about Simmons than about Niang. But like Seamus said, as much as I don't like the Niang trade, it's it's what's best for our team financially, and we're able to clear millions of dollars and get under that second apron. So in terms of like Brad Stevens doing his work, I'm happy about it. But yeah, right now it's looking good for the Celtics. It's looking good coming up to next season. And like Seamus said, we're setting up for a much better future for our team. So as a Celtics fan, I'm not looking forward to next season. I'm looking forward to the season after and the season after that when we have Tatum back and when we have more room to maneuver and make those big moves that we had last season or two seasons ago, and hopefully get back to that spot where we can be contenders for the championship again. Um, but right now, I wouldn't put it past Brad to have one more move in the books. We have six second round picks. We have Sam Hauser. We have Niang. We have Simmons. Some of those guys on that list, some of those options, someone on that list could be put in a packet to make another deal, probably our last deal before the season starts. And yeah, I wouldn't put it past Brad to have something else up his sleeve before the season starts.
No, yeah. And Seamus, I was gonna ask you really quick. I was gonna text it to you, but I'll just say it on the recording. If you don't mind finding that picture of Niang grabbing Jalen Brown's leg, but
Oh, we
I
got we got that all. Yep,
oh,
we definitely we'll get
well,
that queued up right away.
well, the reason I asked that is because like I said, big Maine Celtics guy. Go to a lot of Maine Celtics games. You guys are gonna have a lot of coverage for the Maine Celtics when that season starts picking up. There was a guy who was like that, and his name is Philip Wheeler. Ended up signing a 10-day contract with the Sixers, and then came back to the Maine Celtics for the last game. But I talked about this a lot, and I don't know if I've talked about it on Celtics Nation Rise podcast, but Philip Wheeler is a guy who had an altercation with the Maine Celtics, and you look at Georges Niang too. He's the same guy, kind of had an altercation with them, and then comes back. Well, I'm gonna say the Philip Wheeler story really quick. Philip Wheeler, it was New Year's Eve, and I went to the Maine Celtics game, and he's throwing down dunks, and then he starts getting into it with the bench, and he almost got teed up. There was almost a fight that started. And then a couple weeks later, he gets traded to the Maine Celtics. So, and they loved him. You know, when I went to that playoff game, and even before that, when they were winning and dominant, they were fun. Like when he was throwing down dunks, the crowd was getting into it, and he started taunting the other team. That's just his mentality, and we have that in Georges Niang. He's a guy who's gonna, give it back to you. And I feel like you brought it up now, Seamus. So, Seamus, if you wanted to explain this picture really quick.
Well, first of all, I gotta say, shout out to those Maine Celtic jerseys you saw in the other
Oh
photo.
yeah,
Just
let's go
absolutely.
back.
Let's go back to that for a second. Can you explain these jerseys, Griffin?
Yeah, so I believe it was for let me try to think. It was for breast cancer awareness, I think. Something along those lines. I don't exactly remember, but I'm pretty sure that was the day that their warm-up shirts were so sick too. They do a really good job with their jerseys. I'll geez, Seamus, while you're explaining these, I'm gonna pull up some favorite ones. I'll pull up some favorite ones.
100% because the Maine Celtics jerseys, I feel like, and even just across the G League, they are able to step out of the box and do different things in which you wouldn't typically expect a team to do, and they're a little more lenient as to what their designs are at the lower level of the G League than the NBA. Well, the NBA is a little more. I feel like the manufacturing is a little more robust for the NBA, but I gotta say, G League jerseys always interesting to see. Though I just noticed those jerseys right there when you pulled up that Philip Wheeler photo. However, let's look at this Jalen Brown photo. This is from the 2023 Eastern Conference semifinals between the Celtics and the Sixers. And you see here Brown right by that bench, Georges Niang. That hand that doesn't quite look like a natural motion now, does it? While everybody's face is turned away, right? And look at Doc Rivers too. Look, the funniest part about this photo that we haven't pointed out yet on any program is look at Doc Rivers and Scott Foster right now. Scott Foster, everyone's yelling at Scott Foster. Doc Rivers is going crazy. Everybody on the Sixers bench is going crazy. Meanwhile, Niang, he's using the opportunity of everybody staring at Scott Foster, everybody staring at the court to grab Jalen Brown's knee. And this was a dirty play. I'm sure him and Jalen Brown will have a couple of conversations before they take the court together and suit up in a Celtics uniform on the garden floor. I'm sure they're going to have a couple of conversations about their relationship prior and into the future as well as Jason Tatum. George's Niang, this moment back in November when Jason Tatum, George's Niang wanted to push off on this, even though he flopped. Tatum, step back, drains this three, ends the quarter, and that was all she wrote here in this game. And eventually the Celtics went on to win and beat the Cleveland Cavaliers, who were on a 15-game winning streak to start the season. So the Celtics gave the Cavs their first loss of the season. Regardless of where the legacy of the 24-25 Celtics goes in time, there are a lot of good moments, good memories you can look back at. Like I even think about that at the 2018-19 season. There are some memories back then where if you look at the entirety of the season, right, you're gonna go, ooh, that was a failure of a season, right? Not a great ending. But the rest, the memories in between, right? The rest of the time, the memories in between, that's also important, right? The 2018-19 season. I think about Kyrie Irving. There's the game against Toronto it was around January 16th, mid-January, right? And he scores a ton of points. The Celtics win a Friday night game against the Raptors. And just good moments like that. Christmas that year as well. But one of these good moments for the Celtics this past year was that Cavs game, beating the Cavs after they started 15-0. Everybody was talking about, oh, the Cavs in the East, the Cavs in the East. And the Celtics were like, nope, we're still the prohibited favorites in the East. Obviously, the Pacers wound up in the end being that team, but a good moment right there, and it involved Georges Niang. It's amazing how many moments in the past we've seen in competitive stages in competitive times involve Georges Niang. That's
Well, yeah.
it's I mean I don't we have so much content. All right, so much content over the past 6 months, really, in the program. It's going to be hard to find, but we've talked about Georges Niang at length in the past for purposes that are not positive. And it's very ironic that he's a Boston Celtic, but I'm sorry, I just see his personality fitting in Boston. First of all, he's a New England guy, so there's that. But then secondarily, so he understands the New England culture, right? But secondarily, he is somebody who's going to bring edge to the Celtics. He's going
Totally.
to bring that FU dog to the Celtics. All right.
No.
Because
Yep.
the last couple of years, I mean, no offense to our championship winning squad and last year's squad, just not too many guys with a edge to them, right? Like they have a competitive edge, but it's not really coming out at you like a Marcus Smart, right? Not coming out at you like a Marcus Morris, right? It's not quite emitting itself like a Patrick Beverly, right? Where you're just going, all right, this man is just everywhere. He's all over the court, and he's just coming at the other team. He's coming at his opponent. That's what Georges Niang will bring to the Celtics. The Celtics haven't really had that the last couple of years. We haven't had that just outward personality. I mean, it's certainly there internally. The internal motivation has been there for the Celtics, but I want to see the external emitting of that personality, that edge, that emotion within the Celtics organization, which we've been missing pretty well ever since we traded away Marcus Smart.
Yeah, well, you say that, and I look back at this one, and I saw a video today, and it's funny because we talk about not liking Georges Niang. However, I watched that video, and you see Jaden Springer stand up and go, tech him up. So, and we grown to love Jaden Springer. So, who knows? And then I also look at that, too. Oh, I had a take on the tip of my tongue, but it's gone. So, but while I try to retrieve that thought, here are the pictures, though. You have J.D. Davison in the newest LL Bean uniform. You have Jordan Walsh in last year's LL Bean uniform, kind of that, little style right there. And then, again, you have Jordan Walsh in the Lewiston Strong uniform when that Lewiston shooting happened in Maine. So, a little fun. Sorry, Seamus, I got a little off topic with that. But
No, that was a perfect presentation of those jerseys, right? That's exactly what I was talking about from the Maine Celtics and the rest of the G League. I mean, those are all jerseys in which you step out of the box a little bit and come up with a couple. My favorite one personally is the plaid, right? The green plaid. That one. I want to see. I don't know if they're gonna. I don't know if they've retired this or going to retire this or what's the plan, but I want to see this jersey more often. I'm a fan of that plaid jersey right there. I don't know how other people feel about it necessarily, but I'm a fan.
Oh yeah, obviously I work for the Sea Dogs. They do it a lot too. Like they're the main whoopie pies, the bean supper. They have a lot of fun nicknames that they do though, and it's a fun thing with the minor leagues, So but again, going back to my thoughts and morale on this whole trade and everything, it's upsetting to me. I mean, again, I'm going to pull up a picture. If you guys watch the breaking news, you guys would have seen it. But I was able to meet Porzingis, my brother and I. We went to one of the meet and greets, and he was just such a great guy. And it was at a time where, my life, obviously, I was in some sad parts of my life with my grandfather passing and everything. So just being able to meet Porzingis and everything definitely gave a little happiness. And again, he's a guy in Boston where he's cheering his cup to the crowd, all getting the fans all in it. Seamus, I think, yep. All right, we're going to bring up these pictures too. We brought these up on the breaking news, but it's the time where he got cut in the face and you had blood going down, and Porzingis is just getting the fans into it. You see him coming out, as Seamus liked to say, that war bandage right there. But just a man of the people, and Drew Holiday, I look at him and I look at this situation when he played for the Bucks. That's a guy that I was rooting against. And then when he came into Boston, it was so surreal that he was on our team. I was like, no way, this is the guy that I'm like, oh, you guys gotta watch out for Holiday. Like we gotta prepare for Drew Holiday. And then all of a sudden Drew Holiday's on our team. So it's bittersweet, bringing in Anthony Simons. Like that was a fun one, but then obviously the Porzingis one was a hard one because you're not getting the package deal that you want. However, it alleviates a lot of that salary. And now the Celtics are under the second apron, and that's a positive thing for the Celtics. So with that being said, let's get into the first trade. We talked about how we feel about it, how Celtics Nation is going to feel about it. But, like Seamus already said, it's kind of a retooling. This year is going to be a bridge year so you can compete when Jason Tatum comes back after the following season. So that's kind of the take on that. But actually, speaking of Jason Tatum, we have some news about him. This is a picture that was just leaked. Jason Tatum already in the gym, pulling down some weights. Obviously, you see the boot on that right foot right over there. So you see the boot over there for his Achilles. And this is a quote that Brad Stevens said: "The biggest challenge for our team is that our first team All NBA player is in a boot." As you can see, he is in a boot, but he's still training. He's still, getting in work. He's still prepping. Obviously, he can't do a lot with his legs, but he's going to try to affect the game as much as he can. I'm pretty sure he's sitting down with Deuce on the mini hoop right now, shooting some mini hoops, So, but that made me a little happy seeing that. But what are your guys' thoughts before we dive into the trades? What are your guys' thoughts about seeing Jason Tatum in the gym getting ready? Seamus, we can start off with you.
Well, it's going to be quite a long time, and we're going to get many more gym photos from Jason Tatum over that period of time. And it's just one of those. To the next year, we're not really going to see much of Jason Tatum at all. So it's nice to see some of those photos come out from him working out, because that's kind of the only place we're going to see him when it comes to social media and everything. Like, after every game, right? What do you see? Oh, you see highlights of Jason Tatum and Jason Tatum at the podium and Jason Tatum this and Jason Tatum that. That's all going to be gone next season. And most of the videos will be, oh, here's Jason Tatum running up and down the court. Oh, here's Jason Tatum lifting some weights. And I believe in that photo, he had the boot on. So Brad Stevens, mentioning the boot, and you see it there. You can't see it too well, but it's there on his right leg. And so I wonder too, with the boot and that I mean, I don't know how long he's going to wear the boot, but I wonder how that's going to hamper his workouts throughout the summer and through next season. I mean, you'd have to think the boot comes off at some point for sure, but at what point, I'm not really I'm not too certain of that. But I wonder, my biggest question for the progress of Jason Tatum is, what type of rehab is he actually going through? How are they ramping him up at this moment in time? And what are his goals in rehab, right? Obviously in rehab you want to get back to where you were before, but is right now, Brad Stevens said the other day on his during his press conference after the draft, he said, well, the priority is Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown's health, and there's no timeline for either of them right now. I mean, I shouldn't say either of them, for Jason Tatum specifically. As for Jaylen Brown, we know he's going to be available by training camp. But in terms of a timeline of how he's progressing during the summer, we don't necessarily have that. But it's right now. I wonder what the goal is for Tatum, if he's thinking, oh, I can come back next season, or they're going to hold me out later on in time. I would almost feel like this is where I'm the most comfortable, right, with this plan. I want him to work out as if he's coming back next season, but I don't want him to actually come back next season.
Yeah.
Because if you're holding the mentality of I'm not coming back next season, I feel like your rehab process, your workout process owns the ability to be a little less intense than it really should be. And so that's what Tatum, if that's in the thought process, that that's something that every player has to be wary of. If they're seeing a longer timeline, maybe they're a little less incentivized to go as hard right now. But that's where I'm questioning what kind of workouts, what kind of attack is Jason Tatum and his trainers right now approaching the off season with, this off season and even into the future, because the Achilles that is just a rough injury. I mean, Halliburton, it's not only, right, Halliburton, Lillard, Tatum. The huge story is, oh, they're going to be out all of next season. But what's also a massive story in all three of those injuries is, will any of those players, right, be the same ever again? Because every time a player tears his Achilles, feels as if there's a percentage taken off their former ability, whether that's their athleticism, their quickness, their burst. their mobility, period. We've seen it happen plenty of times in the past. Yet Halliburton, Tatum, Lillard is the one you worry about the most because of how much he relies on that quick burst and the speed as a smaller guard, and also the older age for Lillard. Halliburton and Tatum are a little bit younger. That's why you have a probably more optimism. Both of those guys come back and come back at a percentage that's comparable to what they were before. But ultimately, I just look at all three of those guys and I go, what are the chances each of them come back the same as they were prior? It's
Yeah.
I feel like there's gonna be, I mean, those guys, it's gonna be a really tough road back, and Tatum is unfortunately in that group, and it's it's we're lucky to see Tatum with the ring at this point in his career because there's no guarantee he gets back to that point. There's no guarantee we see the Jason Tatum that we did in the past. He's going on his 27-year-old season, and it's just devastating. It really is devastating because his career, he's been so durable up to this point, and he's grown into arguably a top 3 NBA player, and now he's just going to miss his 27 season. I mean, 27 is the age everybody talks about for players' primes, right? It's 27, 27, 27. It's, oh, when a guy is around 27 years old, that's when he's in the meat of his prime, right? You're right. You're right in the middle of 25 and 30, right? You're 27 years old. Tatum is just going to miss his entire age 27 season. That could have been the best season of his prime. He's just going to miss that entire season, and there's no guarantee he comes back at age 28 and produces at the same level he was at age 25 and 26. And it's definitely more concerning than people want to actually shed light on. The Celtics Nation is definitely taken the path of, oh, he'll be back, he'll be better. Brown and Tatum, they're winning another title. I love the optimism, right? Got to keep that energy, but the reality is there's a lot of concern for a player tearing his Achilles at age 27, missing that entire season. And it's just also the long term of it as well. The long term of in time. I mean, Tatum, it's like, does this derail part of his career? Does this, like, what, Tatum won a ring and he was a top 3 NBA player this season. What kind of status was he actually going to reach in time, right? When people think of Jason Tatum in time, could he be a top 25 player in NBA history, right? I just wonder if something like that is it off the table now for Tatum? Is it a little like when you miss a whole season in your prime? I understand players can come back and rejuvenate themselves with numbers in the future and performances in the future. But right now, you look at all the all-time greats, a lot of them don't tear their Achilles at age 27, and you don't see a huge season in their Basketball Reference where they just miss a big season in their prime. That's the thing with Jason Tatum that doesn't. There's no comparison to other stars in the past where you go, oh, the star tore his Achilles and came back just the same. In fact, most stars who tear their Achilles, they don't come back the same. That being said, all of them who have done so, not quite the talent, skill level, and build of Jason Tatum, right? Jason Tatum, the bigger forward, can score in many different ways, can refine his game potentially to deal with deal with the Achilles potentially hampering his ability. Whereas, John Wall, DeMarcus Cousins, think of those players in the past, even Klay Thompson. Klay Thompson looked good for about a year after his Achilles injury and his ACL injury. I mean, Klay Thompson, that's why it's not very comparable. He missed 2 seasons with a torn ACL and a torn Achilles. That's a little bit different than just a torn Achilles. But DeMarcus Cousins, John Wall, they relied heavily on, well, John Wall, speed, quick burst, downhill attack. DeMarcus Cousins, I mean, he was an agile big man, and he just had all that size and all that weight on himself. I mean, they tore their Achilles, and next thing you know, they're playing on the same team yet again. They played on the same team at Kentucky. Then they were playing on the same team with the Houston Rockets, winning 20 games in a season. So the Tatum injury, we talked about it. We talked about it ad nauseum, but it'll continuously be concerning. And every time I see the workout videos, I'm going to be questioning what type of workouts he's doing and what ultimately the path looks like in his mind, right? What is Jason Tatum's mentality? I would love to. Has he been in an interview since that injury? I don't think
I
he's
don't
been in
think
an
so.
interview.
I don't believe he has been.
Wow, see, but that's what I'm talking about at the start of this. Like, we see Jason Tatum at the podium all the time, games all the time, social media all the time, and now we haven't heard from him in a month and a half. That's fairly regular for the offseason, I'll say that, but because he missed 2 games. So it's like, 2 games. We basically started the offseason that same week. You don't hear from players during the offseason as often outside of social media appearances. Maybe they show up at Summer League, do interviews, podcasts, whatever it is. But now we haven't heard from Jason Tatum in a month. And who knows when we're going to hear from Jason Tatum at an actual press conference. I would love to actually hear that because we haven't seen it in quite a while.
Yeah, no. But Daniel, what are your thoughts on that picture of him working out?
I think coming up to the point where he's going to get better enough, coming up to the point where he's going to be suiting up again, we're going to see a lot of those. We're going to see a lot of those pictures that give that message that he's on his way back. You know, he's working on himself, getting himself better, getting himself back to that point. And this is certainly one of the first ones of this streak of pictures until he's back on the court. And I agree with Seamus. It's good to see him back up there. It's good to see him standing up again. It's good to see him working out and trying to get better, getting back to that point where he's going to be back in the Celtics jersey. I think it kind of brings back some of the sadness of like him being injured, and like it just makes me think again about that game, that play where he was injured, that Brown pass that he almost caught, him having to stretch his leg to catch the pass, and then the injury happening. Just takes me back to that moment and makes me realize that injuries like can come out of nowhere. He was a healthy player relatively for most of his career. And same thing that happened with Halliburton, Damian Lillard, like these sort of injuries come like out of nowhere. And it's just so unfair to these players that like are finally at the point where they're standing out, showing to the crowd who they are. Tyrese Halliburton comes to mind after the season he just had, after that playoff run he just had. He's one of the players who does not deserve something like this happening to him. And it just makes me think that players shouldn't take their career for granted. If you're at the moment where you can show the world who you are, you can show out and ball out, you should definitely do it before an injury like that happens. Where now you have fans asking the question: is he going to be back the same way? Is he gonna come back being the same player he was before? Is he going to be worse, better? And those are questions that, as a player, you don't want to ask yourself, and you also don't want to answer because the realistic answer is you don't know. You can have confidence that you'll be back as strong as you were before, but realistically, like no one knows how someone recovers from something like this. Seamus, you mentioned other players like Cousins and Morris and Clay Thompson and all these players and Kevin Durant who came back from the injuries. But it's different from a player to player case. Like there are players who can come back from this, but there are players who have stepped back on the court and you just see them like looking like tired all the time or limping or just not at that 100% or not as good as they used to be. So hopefully it's not the same for Tatum as all Celtics fans say, but it is good to see him back. It's good to see him. It's good to see him in general.
Yeah.
So yeah, like Seamus said, if he does end up coming back like mid next season or kind of near the end of next season, if I'm Brad or if I'm Missoula, I'm just sitting him till next season. It's much better than bringing him back early and risking another injury that's going to make it worse. Um, uh, it's going to be good to see him on the bench, especially if cross my fingers, especially if we end up making the playoffs somehow. It's going to be good seeing Justin Tatum on that bench cheering for his team, cheering on Jalen Brown and Derek White and the rest of the team. Speaking of JB and White, I think it's good that we're keeping them next season. I think it's been almost 100% confirmed that we're going to be keeping those two together for next season. And so I think the brotherhood is still there without Holiday and Porzingis, unfortunately. But I think that trio, Tatum, White, and Brown, I think is going to be a trio for the season to come, or not next season, but the season after. And hopefully we can continue to bring up the name of Boston in championship history in the future.
Oh no, I totally agree with you, Daniel. And I like the take that you just had too about the fact that he should be sat this whole season. I agree. Even if you know how adamant Tatum is to get back in the lineup, you saw it after he went down. What was it? I forgot. I always remember the game. I think it was against the Kings, going down against the Kings, and he was so adamant to going back against the Suns. And we said a quote that it's the fact that people pay ticket prices to come see him play, so he wants to play. So I wouldn't want to be Joe Mazzulla or Brad Stevens when he's ready and they're like, oh, hey, not so fast. You're not going on the court yet. He's gonna, I won't want to be the guy who has to tell him, all right, Tatum, we're waiting until next season. But I think Coach AJ said this too. I like what he said about the fact that he could be a guy who, even if we make a playoffs and he is ready, maybe he could go in the layup lines and sit on the bench with the jersey on just to give that other team the intimidation factor of, hey, look, we got Tatum on the bench, but you're obviously not going to play him. But it's the fact of, hey, watch yourself. Look who we have. You're forgetting that. It's that kind of factor. I just lost the word. I always do that. But it's just that intimidation. There we go. Intimidation factor. I couldn't say it for a second, but it's that fact. And, I will say this. It's great to see him already working out. He could, and Seamus, I think you said this too. He could be the type of guy too that sulks and sits there and says, why me? This sucks. Da, da, da. But it looks like he's in pretty good spirits. And I think it was a video that Torrey Craig posted of him being like, oh, day 25, and he's in the gym, and Tatum smiling a little bit. So it's not like the fact that, I think he was depressed and upset at first, and we saw that was clear that he was like, why me, dad, upset, da da da. But I feel like he's like, all right, this is a setback. Holy cow, I cannot speak today, Seamus. Whew. This is a setback.
We did cover the draft for 7.5 hours the last 2 days.
Did. So it's a little.
Sometimes it's like it's like players in the NBA. You play a back-to-back. It's like, what are you going to look like on the third day?
Yeah,
like, there's a reason they don't go back-to-back-to-back.
Well, we're going back-to-back today.
Yeah, that's what. No, in filming we go back-to-back-to-back-to-back-to-back-to-back, like, and then on and so forth.
No, but it's the fact that Tatum at first, though, was like, why me? But now he's like, all right, it's a setback. Now I'm going to come back in a better way than I was before. And you see him already working out, improving parts of his game that maybe he hasn't been able to before. So it's going to be interesting to see where he comes back. Seamus has the more truthful, hard, negative outlook, but it definitely needs to be a thought. But I'm going to say this, keep the positivity in the air. Seamus also said it too. Keep the positivity in the air, because I do believe in Jason Tatum and I believe he will be back. But enough about Jason Tatum. We've heard about him all the time. We got to remember the guys who were on our team. Drew Holiday, traded, no longer with us. However, we do have a young guy in Anthony Simons. So let's talk about this trade a little bit. Anthony Simons coming to Boston, and this is a great step for the Celtics. I feel like Brad Stevens really finessed for this one, giving up Drew Holiday and then getting a young player who could obviously is on an expiring deal. And go watch our breaking news as we talk about this a lot. So we're not really going to go too in depth with it, but we'll get Daniel's takes, obviously. But, you get a young guy in Anthony Simons, and that right there impacts the team a lot. And that gives us, some youth in the lineup and giving us some youth alongside Jason Tatum when he comes back. But I'm going to pull up a quote from Drew Holiday, because obviously he's the guy who was behind this trade to bring in Anthony Simons. A source claims Holiday is quote unquote pissed at the Celtics for trading him to the Blazers. But Seamus, there's some other tweets that you have up here. If you wanted to pull those up, for Drew Holiday's reaction from, remember, the Boston Celtics originally acquired Drew Holiday from the Trailblazers, and Drew Holiday, I think he was still in shock that he was traded from the Bucks, as he saw that his long-term home, I feel like. So he was kind of in shock, I feel like that was undeniable at the press conference too, that he was in shock. But then he won that championship. He got acclimated, and then they're like, "Hey, we got a 4-year extension. You want to sign it?" So I don't know what was behind the scenes. If it was like, I feel like he knew that this year, he saw the trade rumors. He's like, all right, well, there could be that chance, but he's like, all right, but I feel like there's some respect because I have this 4-year extension now. So he's like, now I can play the rest of my career in Boston. But Seamus, if you wanted to do these other these tweets really quick about Drew Holiday upset.
Here's number one from Legion Hoops. This is going to be, there are going to be conflicting reports on this one. This is number one from Legion Hoops, stating Drew Holiday is reportedly pissed that he was traded to Portland per Steve B. Hoop. He does not want to go there. So that was the initial report in which we received. This coming from Legion Hoops via Steve B. Hoop. However, another report came out the next day from Aaron Fentress, and mind you, Aaron Fentress, a Portland guy out there with the Trailblazers. 2 NBA sources have now told me that the report claiming guard Drew Holiday is unhappy with being traded to the Blazers is untrue. Excuse me. We will all find out from him in due time. So 2 sources tell Aaron Fentress that Drew Holiday, his unhappiness, completely untrue. So we don't know. We haven't heard from Drew Holiday yet. Well, we have conflicting reports here. However, anytime you're getting traded away from a championship team to a lesser team, right? He's going from the number 2 seed in the East to essentially the number 12 seed in the West. I mean, you're going to feel a certain way about that, but I think Drew Holiday is a player in which looks at his situation and goes, I'm going to attack anything that's in front of me. He's not an Ace Bailey, right? He's not he's not these guys we've seen in the draft, right? Oh, I don't want to go here and I don't want to. Well, Drew Holiday, he might not want to go somewhere, but he's going to come into that situation and absolutely work his ass off. And you could see Drew Holiday in time being a player for the Portland Trailblazers that turns their culture around, right? It turns their complete identity around, right? The Portland Trailblazers, I've said this about them before they acquired Drew Holiday. If they, and I said this more so in the line of the NBA draft, but if they really nail this offseason, I mean, they could be one of the best defensive squads in the league next year in Portland. Offensively, they could also be one of the worst, just saying. But defensively, they're trying to gain that identity out in Portland. And I think Drew Holiday, he's going to certainly bring that for the Portland Trailblazers. And it's going to be regardless of whether or not he actually wants to play there.
Yeah, I'm going to say this initially from me too with Drew Holiday. I feel like from that second tweet that you pulled up, Seamus, I'm going to say with that second one, it's the fact that it's coming from a Trailblazers reporter. So obviously they're going to give them the benefit of the doubt and be like, all right, well, this isn't true because like you saw with the Raptors too. I mean, getting what's his name, Colin Boiler or whatever his name is. There's videos of him mouthing "fuck," but the Raptors are like trying to be like, hold up, that's not the case. He means like "F, I'm excited," So there you can misinterpret things. Who knows? But I feel like at the end of the day, Drew Holiday is definitely upset about this. Totally, because again, like you said, Seamus, he went from being on a 2 seed in Boston, winning a championship, being at the peak where you want to be on a contender. Then and the contract too, a 4-year deal. He's thinking, hey, this could be my permanent home for the rest of my career. Then being traded to a seed in the West who isn't high up there. But Daniel, what are your thoughts on Drew Holiday and his whole thing going to Portland now?
Well, yeah, halfway through the season, we already knew like that we weren't going to have the same team coming up next season because of CJ McCollum and this whole CBA talk, and the fact that I wouldn't call this team the Celtics had a super team, like, and it's unfortunate and unfair that we after winning the championship we can't like have that same team for years to come, but. I understand why it would be unsettling or unfortunate or even why it would make Holiday a little bit upset or mad. But it's just what we have to do, It's I think it's a famous quote that goes on. It's nothing personal. It's just business. That's exactly how it was between the Celtics and Holiday. Obviously, Celtics fans fell in love with both Holiday and Porzingis, but business-wise, it's what we have to do. I'm not mad about the trade once again because I think Simons could add a lot to our team. Um, some would even go to say he adds more offensively than Holiday does, and would be more offensively consistent. But again, we're lacking on that defensive side. But I think the fact that Simons is younger, offers more offensively for the Celtics. I think that makes this a very good trade for Brad, and I think Brad cooked with this one. So yeah,
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. And I'm going to look at this too from this perspective. It sucks, but it's something that had to be done. I mean, you look at that Golden State Warriors team back in the day, and the Cavs when they just kept competing and competing and they kept their championship winning teams and they kept competing and dominating. However, now that's not the case, And I said this, Seamus, before we broke that Drew Holiday news too, is the fact that OKC might be in a similar pattern too. Obviously, the guys that they drafted and brought up into this organization. However, that CBA might attack them someday. We don't know, obviously, and that might be some time to come. But it's just the fact that might affect them. And it's like you can't even keep your hometown guys that you brought in and drafted and developed. That's kind of like the route where I'm like, wow, well, I get it. But at the same time, it's like you drafted this guy, you put your future into him, and now just because the whole salary and everything, you might have to let them go. So it's bittersweet. It helps definitely, but at the same time, you saw it break up our super team in the Celtics. So it's rough, but I feel like we've talked a lot about the Drew Holiday trade and everything. So another guy, again, championship winner right here in Kristaps Porzingis. Obviously, this trade was bittersweet. No, I think it was more so bitter than sweet. A lot of fans were not happy about this. This was just a very good stepping stone in getting in the fact being under the second apron. But a lot of fans are not happy about this and will not be happy about this after acquiring, could not speak again, the minivan, as I brought up again, from Lawrence, Mass. But Seamus, if you wanted to go after this one really quick, we mentioned this again on the breaking news, so go check that out. We posted it a little late, but rather late than never. So go check out the breaking news on Celtics Nation Rise to hear more about it. But Seamus, if you wanted to break down this tweet really quick that you had on the CTW Live as well, if you wanted to read this for everyone at home.
So this is from Kristaps Porzingis giving his flowers away to the Celtics organization and the Celtics fan base on his way out of Boston en route to Atlanta. This reads from Kristaps Porzingis: Boston will always be special in my heart. Huge thank you to the organization, coaches, staff, my teammates, and the fans. Class organization, forever grateful. And you see a couple pictures there of Kristaps Porzingis with the trophy and with Jason Tatum and then with the crowd there. But Jason Tatum, those photos down at the bottom, they're from his Instagram story. One saying farewell to Drew Holiday, the other one giving farewell to Kristaps Porzingis. So you have two of those there. We're finally at the day where I said this last night, Griffin. We have a Jason Tatum. He has a collection of these Instagram stories of his teammates moving on, unfortunately, and now Drew Holiday and Kristaps Porzingis added to that collection. Very I guess somberly. Somberly, is that a word? Somberly? It's a very somber moment.
It's sad. And I'm going to bring up this too. This made me disgusted to see this, to see him post this. Obviously, he's trying to embody being on a new team now, but Porzingis on his Instagram story yesterday, genuinely excited for what's ahead as you see him in an Atlanta Hawks uniform alongside Trae Young and the rest of the Hawks team right there. So that just made me a little disgusted seeing that. Obviously, he's going to embrace being an Atlanta Hawk, and obviously he's taking it a lot better than Drew Holiday. Obviously Drew Holiday being quote unquote pissed, while Porzingis looking at the bright side and seeing, hey, me and Trae Young are gonna make a good duo over there in Atlanta. So it hurts, but Seamus, you and I have talked a lot about the Porzingis trade, the Drew Holiday trade, but obviously, Daniel, you already mentioned it, but do you want to kind of brush up a little more on your thoughts on this trade. Georges Niang in a 3-team trade, bringing Georges Niang to Boston alongside with Terrence Mann going to the Brooklyn Nets.
Yeah, I think obviously last season wasn't Porzingis' best season, and I think that's the reason why we didn't get much off of the Porzingis trade. I mean, I think that's one of the main reasons why we settled for George Niang. By the way, it's pronounced George, not Georges. I have a friend that had an interview with him that was like a big Sixers fan when he was down there, and like he was like basically friends with George Niang, and he talked to them, and he was like, the S is silent at the end of the name, so it ends up being George Niang.
Okay, so can I say the whole first broadcast I was saying George Niang, and I'm like, everyone else is saying Georges Niang, and I'm like,
really?
I really messed that up. And now you're saying this, and I've changed it, and I've been saying Georges Niang, and now it's up again.
But yeah, Niang himself has said to one of my friends that the S is silent at the end of his name. So I think I'm pretty safe knowing that the S is silent at the end of his name. But I'll say it again. I'm not a big fan of him. I don't know. I don't know much about him yet in the Celtics uniform, but I wish that I understand why we went for Niang. Obviously, contract wise, financially, it's the best option. But I wish we could have gotten more with Niang. I wish we could have gotten like a first round pick with Niang. I think that would have made the package a little bit better, or the 3-team trade a little bit better. But I understand where Brad is cooking. I see the visions because now we have 2 second-round picks. I mean, 6 second-round picks, and a whole lot of other things we can put together in another deal. But yeah, I think Porzingis in the end had to go because of his contract. And once again, I wish both with this trade and with the Simmons trade, I wish we could have gotten like just a first-round pick somewhere in one of those 2 trades. Because those are both big names. You see Porzingis in the NBA Finals putting up big work, and obviously 2 seasons ago, and you see Holiday as another big name. So I wish we could have gotten just a little bit more in those 2 drafts or trades. But I think I see what Brad is cooking, and I see the vision. So financially wise, I say Ning is a good trade, but I think player wise, I'm probably not going to be remembering any Niang plays that he has in a Celtics uniform. Still not too big on it. Uh, and there's a good reason why, on that clip of him grabbing Brown's leg and just him being like just a great player in general. So, I think financially, I'm happy about the trade. Clears up a lot of millions from the contract. Yeah, exactly. Like, why are you doing that? Like I still don't see why he's such a petty player. And I guess I understand where Seamus is coming from. I see he brings that like dog factor to the Celtics, but I still don't understand why he's doing something like that to Brown. Like Seamus said again, it's gonna be weird, like the conversations they have in the locker room and like what they talk about and how they like kind of like put the beef aside to be like playing together. But yeah, I think it's a good trade financially, but I don't know if Niang would be the name that you'd be like trading Porzingis for. If you ask me like at least like if you asked me like a month ago or 2 weeks ago, if you saw this happening, I'd say you're crazy. If Brad was thinking about bringing George Niang to the Boston Celtics, but I understand why he did it, and I guess I'm just happy to see the team on the court. I guess with Niang, unless we reroute him, which is not off the books yet. So I guess we'll see.
Yeah, as we transition Seamus out of here. But no, I agree with you, Daniel. It's one as you see him right here winning the championship with Boston. It's one where it sucks. We're under the second apron now. So you look at that and you're like, oh, well, that's nice. We could do a lot of things. And Seamus broke this down greatly for us in that breaking news. So go check that out. It hurts. It's one thing where you're not happy about. I'm going to miss Tingus Pingus and all those memes with, oh, who the F is Tingus Pingus and all of that, But, I'm going to say one thing, though. It's the memories. it's the memories that we had with Drew Holiday and Porzingis. It's the memories of bringing them into Boston, winning that championship. And it's the fact that, now we look to the future and we look at all the great things that are ahead and us retooling to build up with Jason Tatum. And I'm happy. It sucks, but I'm happy for the future. I'm happy for the future. Daniel, do you think this is a move that, do you see if obviously, like you said, if we reroute George Niang, not George Niang, if we reroute George Niang, obviously that's the move that you would prefer, and I feel like I would prefer as well. But could you see this guy if, when Jason Tatum's back, we get more pieces, say we get a center, say we get some other pieces on this team? Do you see George Niang being a person that we could rely on to bring some edge off of the bench?
Off the bench, yeah. Yeah, I guess I can agree. He's not that bad of a player. But like, I guess I'm going off of his actions more than who he is as a player. But I think off the bench, I think he could offer a lot, especially if we do end up shipping out a Hauser, and like some of those picks and some of those like bench guys. We would need someone else to rely on, and I think George Niang, I guess, would be a pretty good fit off the bench. So yeah, it's gonna be exciting, but yeah, I think I agree. George Niang would be a pretty solid piece off the bench.
Well, I'm going to say one thing too I remember about George Niang. I remember when he was in Philly and he just wanted to get the heck out of there. So, he brings that Boston mentality, hates Philly too. So, I mean, we'll see. We'll see. I mean, this might be a guy that we end up looking back at and being like, "Oh, hey, I'm a big fan of him." We could look back at him and just be like, "Oh, this was a guy where, hey, look, he was an enemy at first, and then we turned to like him." Like, again, like I'm going to pull up this graphic with Philip Wheeler. Obviously, a lot of guys might not, a lot of people, ladies and gentlemen, who are watching the podcast might not know him, but for the main Celtics, that was a guy that they didn't like, and then they ended up, falling in love with, being a big fan of him. But, Daniel, some draft talk now. The NBA draft has concluded. And before we really dive in depth into, obviously the other picks in this draft, I want to brush up on two of, as you see going down below in the ticker, two of the picks that were first. So, first of all, shout out to Cooper Flag. This will be the last time I talk about him on the podcast because he's an enemy. Probably not the last time, but last time you'll see him clickbaited in thumbnails and da-da-da and hear me yapping about Cooper Flag. And then you have him with his mom and dad right here. But so proud of him because he's a guy that came from Maine. And I was just so excited to see him going to the NBA, obviously younger than me. And I grew up 45 minutes away from him, and he was in the area all the time when I was nearby. So that's exciting. So I don't know if you have anything to share on Cooper Flag. Obviously, Daniel, you being in Maine as well. Any thoughts? Were you excited to see him getting drafted, though?
Oh yeah, definitely. I think the thing I was mostly excited about is that New Balance deal and the fact that it's a New England grown business, and like how he embraces the fact that he's from New England. He embraces the fact that he's from Maine or from this east side, and I think that's really cool about him. Yeah, I think that's it. I don't have much else to share, but I think it's a good pick. Obviously, we knew I was going to Dallas to the Mavs, but we've talked about this before. We could see him potentially, crossing my fingers, in a Celtics uniform 5 to 10 years from now. Let's pray on that. But yeah, for now, I think I'm gonna be watching a few Mavs games just to see how he is. And I think I'm an AD fan. I'm a big AD fan. I think is my I think top 5 or top 3 like favorite players, especially after that bubble season. And I think it's gonna be exciting to see how he mentors Cooper Flag. I think we could see Cooper Flag getting some of that Giannis growth, because you see Giannis coming into the season like looking like a toothpick, I would say. But right now, he's one of the most dominant force in the league, and I think AD could give Coop a lot of knowledge, a lot to share about how you can better yourself in this league. And I hope AD becomes a good mentor for Cooper Flag, and I think we could see Cooper Flag 3 or 4 years from now gaining like 20 pounds more of mass, weight, and muscle, and just him being like a better player, better looking player in the league. So yeah, excited for him.
No, and you said say that right here, and I'm gonna try to pull up a picture of Cooper Flag in high school at Nokomis, who I actually I'm gonna bring up. I'll bring up a picture someday if I remember it. That geez, I'd be looking for half hour trying to find a picture of me facing Nokomis in football. Actually, I bet I can find one, so we'll try to find that throughout this episode. But no, you said that, and I think the fact too is that he has 2 first round picks in Kyrie Irving and Anthony Davis to be his mentor as well. It takes a lot as a first round pick, to kind of deal with that stress and everything that goes alongside of that. So having 2 mentors in them is oh, I did end up finding the Nokomis picture. I'm gonna try to pull this up on stream, so we'll try to get this up here in a second. But it's just the fact that he has 2 first round picks and he's on a team where we don't know when Kyrie Irving will be back, but he's on a team where they could be dominant and be looking for a ring. The window's obviously a lot shorter being with older players, but Cooper Flag is an impact now ready guy. I feel like he's a guy who's going to impact the game just from the get-go. What are your thoughts, though? Do you think he could impact it at first? And do you think that, the Mavericks obviously making it to the championship, against the Boston Celtics, the Celtics end up winning it. But do you see Cooper Flag and the Dallas Mavericks as a team that could end up winning it right now or like being successful in the near years to come? What are your thoughts, Daniel? As I'm trying to pull this up for you guys.
Yeah, I'll be going for a while just to give you some of that time, but I think I don't think next season. I don't think we're going to see a lot of like dominance from them next season. But in the years to come, yeah, definitely. Like you said, the window is shorter because we don't know how many years AD has left. We don't know how many years Klay Thompson has left. We don't know how many years Kyrie has left, and we don't know when Kyrie's coming back exactly. So yeah, the window is shorter on when it comes to like how much this team can do. But I think when you talk about Cooper Flag specifically, you said that perfectly. He's an impact now player. You saw his instant impact in 1 year at Duke, taking them almost to the finals and almost winning it with that team. And he was a star player, leading his team in every single stat. You saw points, rebounds, blocks, assists, steals, minutes, everything. And he's going to be a starter. He's going to be an immediate starter for that team, and I think that says enough about the impact he's going to have. I think the starting five I saw is going to be Kyrie, Clay. I think Kyrie, Clay, Lively, AD, and then Cooper Flag in the rotation as well. I think they have Cooper playing the three. He's going to be playing the three next season for them because you have Lively and AD playing the 4 and 5, and he fits perfectly into the team. They needed a three who can score, who can facilitate, because AD and Kyrie can do it all. So you have someone who could potentially be adding like 15, 20 points more to your every game, and I think that offers a lot for the Mavs. Obviously, he's gonna impact the team a lot, especially for a Dallas team that has little to no bench. So yeah, they're relying a lot on their starters, and adding Cooper Flag to that team, I think speaks a lot about what team Dallas could be in the upcoming years. So yeah, it's gonna be exciting.
Yeah, well, as you say that, we have Cooper Flag here in the Nokomis uniform in high school. And then, ready, wait for it, right here, I'm number 60. Geez, I bumped around so many numbers. I don't think I had the same number, no, because I was 68, 60, 32, 55 throughout my high school career. So senior year being 32, but I think this was my sophomore year. So Cooper Flag, obviously you see me number 60, was balling at Nokomis while I was out there blocking people on the line while he was in the gym shooting hoops. He was probably there too. He probably saw me playing football. I don't know. I don't know. But fun to know that with Cooper Flag. But another relevant topic I have to the draft too is that we showed this during the stream. You know this guy right here, Daniel? Ron Harper Jr. His brother Dylan Harper getting drafted, but I actually at a main Celtics game got to meet Ron Harper Jr. right here, as that was a little fun time meeting Ron Harper, his dad, Dylan Harper, his brother, and Ron Harper Jr. now a two-way player for, I can't think of them, the Pistons. But what are your overall thoughts on the draft? We'll get into the Celtics players right after I hear your takes. From just overall draft wise, I think the Spurs had one of the best drafts ever. Like, that was getting Carter Bryant and Dylan Harper. I thought they had a very great draft. Obviously the Mavericks with Cooper Flag. The Nets, not so much. I'm hearing a lot of crap talking about that. And it's like, geez, you had 5 first-round picks, and look what you ended up with. And then obviously the Trailblazers getting Yang. I don't know his name, but obviously him, who was in the crowd. Toronto getting Colin Boyles, or however you say his name, and going, F that. But, like, who knows? They're like, oh, he said that in happiness. But what are your thoughts overall on the draft? And then we'll get into the Celtics picks.
Well, I'm going to start with the Colin Murray Boyles situation. I think another narrative of that F-bomb he dropped, I think, which is the one that I'm going to go with just for safety reasons. I think it's the fact that his girlfriend, Chloe Kitts, plays, like, they play in the same city, or like they both play basketball and they're both in the same city. But I think now that he's going to have to, like, I think it's going to be a long distance relationship between him and his girlfriend, Chloe Kitts. And I think that might be part of the reason why he dropped that bomb, is because, like, he's now moving further away from his girlfriend. So I don't know. There's a lot of stories to that, but I think overall in the draft, besides Cooper Flag, I think my favorite player who was picked was VJ Edgecombe. He dropped a story in the interview that, like, really resonated with me, and, like, I think he's bringing back some of that hunger in the league, something that hasn't been seen in a long time. I'm seeing people say that the last time they've seen someone that hungry was Anthony Edwards. And I think I kind of agree with that. He kind of has a little bit of Anthony Edwards in it. And I think it's going to be excited. I'm going to be excited to see him in Philly with Tyrese Maxey, Embiid, and who is the guy from last year?
Jared McCain. Yeah,
McCain. Yeah, I forgot about that. McCain. I think Philly is going to be an interesting team next season.
Oh, yeah. And Johnny Broom now. too.
I forgot about that. Yeah,
Johnny
Broom. Something weird that I noticed about the draft is, like, a lot of the big names went second round. I don't know if you know, like, first round people are just picking, like, any, like, outside of the top 10 picks. I couldn't remember anyone's names. I didn't know anyone from the first round, but coming into the second round, you see all these big guys going, and I'm like, how did these guys fall to the second round? It's so much different from last year, I would say, because last year was the whole a different, like, 360, I would say, or 180, where the big guys went in the first round, and then you see players like Bronny James being picked in the second round. I was talking to my brother and making fun with him, and I was like, the 55th pick this year is going to be better than, like, is already better than Bronny. And, like, that just speaks about, like, the talent-wise, how much better this season was in terms of, like, college basketball and, like, a lot of the guys that are going to be in the league next season. I think the team that won this draft was the Spurs. I think Dylan Harper and Carter Bryant are going to be really big for the Spurs.
Yeah.
A lot of the talk I'm hearing now is, like, rotation-wise, how is that going to work? Because you have, like, I think 3 or 4 guards now or something like that. You have Fox. You have your rookie of the year. And now you're bringing in Dylan Harper, another rookie. It's going to be weird seeing the rotation and how many minutes Harper gets, because I don't see them getting rid of Fox or what was that guy's name? Rookie of the year.
Wemby?
No, the rookie of the year.
Stephon Castle.
Stephon Castle, yeah.
So good bench pieces, though. Good bench pieces in Carter.
Yeah, you're right. That is good. That is good. That is good bench pieces. So, yeah, now that we say good bench pieces, I think the Spurs are going to be a really good team next season. You see Wemby coming back. I think I'll speak on Wemby for a little bit. I think this run has been on this summer. I think he's like
He's ready.
doing his Zen mode, and like he cut off all his hair and is coming into the season probably bald. I don't know, but I hope he comes in bald because like it's a different look, and like it's just like he's gonna be scary next season. You can just tell already.
Oh,
And
totally.
also the fact that he led the league in blocks after playing like half the season, and he still like ended up as the block champion in the league. I think says a lot about him. I think the Spurs are going to be a really exciting team. I think Fox was an amazing addition to them because they needed someone with experience. And Chris Paul was that guy for a while, but he just wasn't enough. And I think Fox is going to be that guy, that second piece to take them far. And you mentioned Harrison Barnes, Stephon Castle, and now Dylan Harper. I think the Spurs are going to be an exciting team next season. I think one of the most underrated teams coming out of the East. West. What other players could I speak about? I think Ace Bailey is going to be a bust. I'm going to go ahead and say.
Oh yes.
I think it's going to be a big bust.
Attitude.
Yeah.
No, not a fan of it. If you don't want to make money, then get out of the league. Like you're. I think I heard he's 18 years old. 18 years old and it has that attitude. I don't like that. I don't like that from the get-go.
What was agent saying? I think it was like they were trying to keep him away from like getting drafted to the Jazz or something like that. Like it was just like this whole controversy going on about like what team he should be drafted on, and it was just handled poorly by a lot of the players in that draft. I would say, like you see a lot of the players and they weren't showing like great attitude about being drafted. But yeah, I think this draft class is going to be one for the future, and it's going to be one of the best draft classes we've seen in a while since I think Cade Cunningham's class, I think, was the last good one I've seen. But yeah, I think this class is going to be fun. It's going to be nice, and I'm excited for the season.
Yeah, no, but what you said, Daniel, I agree. This is going to be one of the best draft class of all time, I feel like. You look at this, and a lot of these players are NBA ready and could affect the game, except for the Nets picks, I would say. Pretty questionable there.
Yeah, Nets, I don't know what the Nets are doing, man. 5 picks, and like none of them stood out. Like none of them were seen as like really big or like, except for Igor Denim, I guess, or Igor Demon. I don't know how to say his name, but I think that was the only.
I like Danny Wolf too. I think that's a. Guy.
Danny Wolf is a good one. Yeah, I forgot about Danny Wolf too. But other than that, I don't know what the Nets are doing. Like the Nets are just like such a poverty franchise that like I don't even know like what exactly is going on there. Do they rely on Cam Thomas as their main player? What are they? What's going on with them? But yeah, I think a lot of the teams did good though. Who did the Hornets get? I think the Hornets got a big.
The Hornets got Cockburner.
Cockburner, that's the one.
Cockburner, and they got Con Knipple, and then they got McNeely from UConn. So I think that the Hornets
yeah,
very good draft as well.
I was going to bring up the Hornets because I think they had a really good draft. I think my favorite player from those 3 is Calc. I was a big fan of him in college, in his college season. And I think it's going to be really good for them after they traded Mark Williams to the Suns. I think it's going to be the next big in the Hornets. Yeah. What?
But he's kind of like a Luke Cornett big. But
yeah. I could see him being really big for the Hornets, but I don't see the Hornets going anywhere anyways because of LaMelo Ball and his injury-prone character. But I think it's very good setting up the Hornets' future.
Yeah. No, totally. But with that being said, we're going to get into our Celtics picks. Now, I'm going to tell you now, I was not a big fan of Hugo Gonzalez. I was not a big fan about a lot of these people. Well, have you turned on Hugo yet?
No, not really. I think I saw something where like he averaged like 1.9 points last season in like the Euro League or something like that. And I was just like, why did we pick him? There were so many names. The reason why I mentioned that is because once again, a lot of the big names went in the second draft. So why didn't we pick one of those big names? I think we needed to get a big, and I think Amari Williams did that. I think we did good with Amari, but we could have done so much better than Hugo Gonzalez, in my opinion.
Well, I'm going to turn you on Hugo. I really am, because I'm going to tell you what. I agree with you. I was in the exact same shoes, but let's get right into it. with the 28th pick in the NBA draft, the Boston Celtics select Hugo Gonzalez. I was not a big fan of this at all, as you see the 28th pick. Hugo, height 6'6", from Spain, and at age 19. Now, this next one, Daniel, this next one that I'm going to pull up for you is what might make you turn on Hugo. All right. So this is his stats from last year. Average 5.2 points per game, 44.4 field goal percentage, 2.5 rebounds per game, and 0.9 assists per game. Now, this is the thing where I like at the bottom. He was projected to go 26th in the NBA draft to the Brooklyn Nets. That's where he was projected to go. So we technically, if you look at it, we got him from a steal. And this is the last quote I'm going to bring up, and then we'll talk about Hugo a little bit. Hugo is a fiery competitor. He has a track record of winning. Okay? So you look at that track record of winning, fiery competitor, and he was projected to go 26. Now, obviously, Daniel, you don't see him as you look at him and you look from the get-go, all right, can't bring a lot on the scoring side of the ball. However, incredible defender. I watched a lot of his film. He's a guy who he's not very great on the offensive side of the ball. However, he's only 19 years old. He could develop Maine into an offensive threat. However, on the defensive side of the ball, he's a aggressive, nitty player who's going to attack the ball. He really gives me vibes. Remember that play of Marcus Smart when he dives out on the court, grabs the ball, and starts screaming? That's the player that Hugo Gonzalez reminds me of. And you look at what that quote again. I'm going to bring that up. Hugo is a fiery competitor. He has a track record of winning. He said this in their interview with Brad Stevens. I'm hearing that he said he doesn't care what his role on the team is if it's just a fact of winning. And my biggest player comparison is a Jaden Springer. I feel like he's the type of player that, if you put him out for 4 minutes, he's going to go in there. And obviously, you guys will see the Celtics Nation Rise MVP go down every once in a while. But Jaden Springer is on there with one of them. And he went out there, had like 4 steals against the Clippers in like 8 minutes and stuff like that. That's a player that Hugo Gonzalez reminds me of. So I don't know if Daniel, did I kind of convince you a little bit? Because I will admit, I agree. I feel like with the 28th pick, we should have got Ryan Cockbrenner. We should have got McNeely right there. We should have got someone else. But I am turning the door on Hugo. Again, I'm going to pull this one up. He was projected to go 26th in the NBA draft. So you look at that, and we got him at 28th. That, in my book, is kind of a steal. So I was upset about that. I talked to Seamus yesterday, and I was like, hey, if we didn't get him there, where do you think he would have went? And he said low 30s. So this is a guy who still, I feel like, would have been high on people's draft boards. And I'm not mad about the pick now. Have you turned the corner on Hugo? What are your thoughts, though? Have I convinced you a little bit? Because I tell you what, I wasn't in your shoes at all. And what about the people at home? Have I changed your mindset on him? Because I was a guy who, when he got drafted by the Celtics, we were all shocked. And I was like, what? But what are your thoughts now, Daniel? Do you like that kind of competitiveness from Hugo?
Yeah, you've changed my mind a little bit, definitely. Now I'm going to watch some tape and see how he impacts the game defensively. But you mentioned Marcus Smart, and that's a big shoe to fill when we talk about defense and like just hard and putting it all on the floor. I think Holiday had some of that defensively, but not the same as Smart. Like Smart was just a different player when it comes to like leaving it all on the court. And now that you mentioned Smart in the conversation, I think that says a little bit more about Gonzalez. And now I'm gonna change my mind just a little bit about him and just give him a chance to prove himself.
Yeah, totally. Because I feel like that this is the player. He's young. He's 19. They could develop him in Maine for the scoring aspect at least. But defensively, he's a threat. And he's a guy who, I see him blocking shots, and he's aggressive and gets hype. I mean, you see with the 28th pick, he's screaming right there. He's into it, So I will
think is he going to be a two-way player? Like, are we going to make him like?
I believe
or not?
I don't believe so. I
Okay.
feel like the only two-way players are Amari Williams, Miles Norris, and Max Shugla. I think his
Shulga.
name. Shuga.
Shulga. Yeah. Shulga.
Shulga.
Yeah.
Shulga. Yeah, Shulga. I think those are the three two-way players. So I don't know if Hugo will be, but he will play in Maine. Regardless, they could put him in Maine. He might be a two-way player. I was Baylor a two-way player last year.
Yeah, he was.
Okay, so then Hugo will be too. Then Hugo
Yeah.
will be too. But yeah, Hugo will probably be a two-way player then, and he'll get a lot of time in Maine. Obviously, he might get a lot of run with the Celtics, this being a bridge year, but he could develop in Maine. And Daniel, you and I are gonna have to get an interview with Hugo Gonzalez when he comes to Maine.
I like that.
That's gonna be a
I
fun
like
one.
it a lot.
Yeah, I'm looking at that. I'm like, geez, I'm excited for that interview, and I'm excited to hear what he could bring to the Celtics, especially from a defensive perspective, because he's a guy again, like I already said, leaving it all on the court. I feel like he's a guy that's gonna leave it all on the court. He's gonna go out there aggressive. You know, he's gonna bring a lot on the defensive side of the ball. So that's a player I like to see. But we'll move on from Hugo. With the 46th pick in the NBA draft, the Boston Celtics select Amari Williams. All right. I know, Daniel, you're big on this one. And so wasn't Seamus. Seamus said before, he said, too, he wanted Amari. You know, I was a big guy on Tyrese Proctor. I thought they should have either got him, but I like Amari, too. I really liked Amari in this situation. With the Cavs, I think they selected Tyrese Proctor after us, but I'm big on Amari. Amari Williams, height 7 foot from Kentucky, age 23, so kind of a little older than Hugo, but still is a great player. And he's honestly a lot like Baylor Shireman, I feel like, just from age perspective. He's kind of like in the same shoes as Baylor Shireman. Baylor Shireman being 24, Amari Williams being obviously 23. These are, if I pull it up right here. Oh. All right, here are his stats. 10.9 points per game, shot 56.1% from field goal, 8.5 rebounds per game, and 3.2 assists per game. Wow. These stats right here are big, and I am a huge fan of his stats. And I wanted to put these in here because I look at these and wow, he's a player that could affect the game immediately. And obviously, as of right now, is a two-way player with the Celtics, and he's obviously going to get a lot of run in the summer league. But I think he's a guy, obviously, right now, the only Celtic players we have on the roster that can play the big man position is Neemias Queta and Xavier Tillman. So I think he's a guy who's instantly going to make an NBA appearance. I think he's going to spend a little bit in Maine, obviously, but I see him coming up for the Celtics pretty soon. Obviously, the Celtics now being under the second apron can go after Luke Cornett and Al Horford again. But this is a guy I could see, falling into the Celtics. You're big on Amari Williams too. What are your thoughts?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Let's hear the breakdown.
He's a walking 10 and 10, in my opinion, like a walking 10 and 10. In the SEC last season, he put up 12 points, 9 rebounds, 4 assists in 24 minutes of playtime per game. I think that's big, especially because we've been looking for rebounding for such a long time. Porzingis was okay with it, but I wouldn't call Porzingis a rebounder. I would call him like a rim protector more. And he obviously offered us a lot of points, but we needed someone who could rebound the ball. We needed someone who could get up there. I think Luke Cornett would be like right now our best option on that front. Either Cornett or Horford when it comes to actually rebounding the ball and stopping the team from getting the ball, because we suffered a lot from that against the Knicks, as you could see in that series. Rebounding was a serious issue for us. One we couldn't get past, and we ended up losing that series. So I think getting someone who's good at rebounding is really big for us. I think Amari is really good. Also, he's a good playmaker. 4 assists a game is a lot for a big. He actually, let's see, some news here about Amari Williams. he shattered Kentucky's single-season assist record for a 7-footer with 80 assists. The last record was held by Sam Bowie with 66. So
Wow.
Bowie had 66 and he had 80. You know what a big jump that is for like a 7-footer to end with 80 assists on a season? That's really big. I think for a season without a playmaker like Tatum, we're gonna need someone else who can share the rock and get those assists for us and get into that playmaking perspective. So I think Amari Williams is once again going to be an exciting pick. I hope he plays more minutes on the Celtics than on the G League or on the main Celtics. But either way, I'm going to be watching games of him and watching film, and I'm really excited about this one.
Well, we're going to see a lot of him in Maine. You and I are going to be at a lot of those games, definitely. Watching Amari Williams, as Seamus said, he could be a stash guy, kind of keep down there and bring him up and could affect the game later at time. But I look at the age comparison as I bring this up, 23 compared to Hugo being 19. I think, Hugo Gonzalez also reminds me of J.D. Davison being 19 when we drafted him. And, you see how he's developed in the G League. I feel like Hugo Gonzalez can be a player that could stay a little time in the G League and work his way up to being a good player. And I feel like for Amari Williams, this is a year where you need center depth. Keep him down there at first, build him, get him ready, and bring him up.
Exactly. I also think in a way his age also plays along with his what is it called? With his knowledge and also with his experience. Because obviously the older you are, the more experience you have. And so I think for someone his age, 23, he's already played a lot, and I think he has a lot to offer for his age on the Celtics court. So I'm going to be excited to see him. I hope Brad thinks more about putting him as that eighth man coming off the bench, or maybe even ninth for the Boston Celtics next season. And yeah, it's going to be fun to see him play behind Al Horford and Cornette and learn a lot from him. Before the draft, I was big on Keita getting more minutes and developing more. Hopefully that still happens.
Keita will, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and I'm also big now on Amari Williams, developing and getting that knowledge from Al Horford and Cornette, and just knowing how to be a big exactly from them. So yeah, it's gonna be exciting.
Well, I forgot to mention this too. Obviously, you see the 46th pick. However, we have the 32nd pick. We traded the 32nd pick to Orlando for the 46th pick, the 57th pick, and 2 future second-round picks. So I'm big on that move. I feel like, yeah, we could have got Ryan Kalkbrenner right there, but I'm big on Amari Williams. I like that move, Maybe we get another Robert Williams out of him as you see those stats again. But for the next player, in the NBA draft, the Boston Celtics, for the 57th pick in the NBA draft, the Boston Celtics select Max Shulga. Is that how you say it again?
Yeah, Shulga.
Shulga. Yep.
Yeah.
Max Shulga, height 6'5" from BCU. All right. Age 23. So again, another 23-year-old. I did not like this at all at first. I was not a big fan of Max Shulga. I feel like Seamus wasn't, not that he didn't like him as well. I'm going to bring us back up for a second, because Seamus wasn't like, oh, I don't like him, I just don't know him. Because that's the problem. When you get into those late 50s, unless your name's Bronny James, no one knows you. So he's a guy where, how high is his ceiling? Not sure, but here's some stats that really changed my perspective on him. Last year, he averaged 15 points per game. He shot 43.5% from field goal, 5.9 rebounds per game, and 4 assists per game. So
2 steals as well.
2 steals per game as well?
2 steals, yeah. 2 steals.
So
that's pretty big. I've
opened the door on him. I am open to Max Shulga. I did not like him at first, and I apologize. I it must have been autocorrect, but on my post on Instagram, I spelt his name completely wrong. But I've opened up the door on him. I don't think he's a player that's going to get a lot of minutes with the Celtics. I think he's going to be a two-way player, and you're going to see him spending a lot of time in Maine. But what are your thoughts Daniel, because I was not high on him at first, but then I looked at his stats as soon as we drafted him yesterday, and I instantly was like, I'm not mad. I'm not mad about this. It's definitely a head scratcher as in anyone. I wanted the Celtics to go after Ryan Nimhard for that pick, obviously, brother of Andrew Nimhard, but I turned the door on Max Shulga. But what about you, Daniel? What are your thoughts on Max Shulga?
Oh yeah, I'm really big on him just because any player that I know, I'm usually like big on once you draft. I didn't know Amari Williams. I love him, but I knew Max Shulga from his college years and at
Yeah.
VCU, and I watched him play as well. Like obviously, I'm not like at the and the stadium, but I was a fan of him a little bit. And just to point out here his progression from the season before, in the 23-24 season, he averaged 14 points. He's bumped it up to 15 last season. 2 seasons ago, he averaged 4.6. Now he averages 5.9. What is that? Rebounds? Yeah, rebounds. And for assists, he used to average 3.7, and now he averages 4. So his career progression in the last 2 years has been a lot. As the main guy for VCU, he played 33 minutes for them last season. So he was really big. And to go with those 2 steals, I think once again is going to be a defensive. He's going to have a defensive mindset, which is what we've been needing in the Celtics organization. And I really like him as a pick. What I like most about him is those 2 steals. I think that says a lot about defensively where he is or where he's at, and maybe he's going to be paired up with Hugo Gonzalez on the court at some point. And if he is, we might see like a 6 steals a game combined between both of them, and really good defensive standout from both of them. So I'm excited about that.
Well, if you wanted to give a little more on him, because or a little more thoughts on him too, because I'm gonna try to bring up a picture of who he kind of gives me vibes of right now. Went undrafted. No, I think he went undrafted. But I'm gonna try to bring up a guy who he kind of reminds me of that I got to meet. But if you wanted to go on a little more, if you have a little more on Max Shulga.
Yeah, last year he was named Atlantic Top 10 Player of the Year, earning first team All A10 honors in both 24 and 25. So 2 seasons in a row where he's named the A10 Player of the Year. I think that says a lot about accolades wise where he's at and how much of an impact he had on VCU. Averaged, let's see, okay, averaged 21 points a game, 5 rebounds, 5 assists, and a steal. And is when he earned Player of the Week, A10 Player of the Week. His stats for that week were 21, 5, 5, and a steal, shooting 66.7 from the field, and hitting 9 out of 13 threes in that week. So in that week, he went 9 for 13 from threes and shot 67% from the field, averaging 21 points. Dropped 22 points against George Mason and Duquesne, energizing both games for VCU and earning them both wins to climb in those ATN standings. He's from Ukraine. He's a Ukrainian player. Moved to Spain when he was 11. Played at Utah State, transferred to VCU, and that's where he was for his last 2 seasons. He described the court as this getaway or his outlet, and provides him emotional refuge during difficult times. So he sees playing basketball or playing on the court as a safe space or as a place providing emotional refuge. Um, Also, the last thing I'm going to say about him is that he led VCU to a regular season A10 title as they went on with being co-champions with a 25-6 record. So I think he's a leader. He's a leader, and he's really a guy that's going to impact whatever team he's on, and really be the guy that they need in terms of scoring, rebounding, and defense.
Mhm.
So yeah.
Well, I'm gonna pull this up. This is a guy I don't know if he reminds you of him too, just from NBA perspective. Jack Golke, who I got to meet. Jack Golke, I don't know. He kind of gives me Jack Golke vibes. Not definitely a different player than Jack Golke, like completely different player. But he's a guy that could have easily went undrafted, but can has potential to affect the game. I feel like he's going to spend a lot of time in Maine, but and I said I connected this pick a lot to Anton Watson, but I'm going to change that because I feel like he's a lot better than Anton Watson. As Anton Watson, who was drafted by the Celtics last year, ended up getting cut from the Celtics, is now with the Knicks. But I feel like this is a guy who could be, obviously with the 57th pick, who could be developed into something. I don't know where his career is with Boston. I haven't looked at that. I'm like, could he have a career with Boston? I don't know. But I look at, you said it too right there, Daniel, his stats and everything that you just provided. He could be a guy who could affect the game immediately for the Celtics. And not immediately for the Celtics, but in future time for the Celtics, as we bring up his stats again. I mean, look at this. This is what blew me away. I was like, okay, all right, there's something behind here. But ultimately, do you have any final thoughts on the players we drafted or anything regarding these players in the draft that the Celtics acquired? Or do you see anyone? Obviously, you already talked about who you would have rather seen them, but what are your thoughts now on Hugo, Amari, and Max? What are your thoughts on them? Are you happy about these picks? Where can you go from here?
Well, you changed my mind on Hugo. I'm now gonna say like I'm not gonna say I'm happy with the pick, but I'm less sad about it now, and I'm gonna give him a chance to prove himself and see where he goes from here. I'm obviously really big on Amari Williams. I think he's gonna be good, really good with the Celtics, and I'm also big on Shulga as well. I think he's gonna need some time to prove himself because I feel like we're big on guards right now, so we're not going to use him much next season, probably not. But I think for the main Celtics, he can offer a lot, and it's going to be fun seeing him play in the G League. I'm going to be tuning into every game for the Celtics.
We're going to be there. We'll be
there.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's going to be fun seeing him play. And obviously, all picks, because they're going to the Celtics, are good picks because we trust Brad Stevens and what he's doing to this franchise. But yeah, it's going to be exciting to see next season which one of those three guys gets the most minutes, which one of those three guys impacts the most in the Celtics uniform. And yeah, it's going to be fun next season. I hope Amari Williams is going to be the top out of those three to get the most minutes and the most experience as well. But good luck to all those three drafts that the Celtics drafted, and bring on next season, honestly.
No, I agree with you, Daniel. I feel like you and I are going to spend a lot of time in Maine, you, me, and Andrew, really analyzing these players and giving you some perspective on how they're going to develop and what they could bring to the table, and interviewing them, being able to sit down and talk to them. So if you guys have any questions that you want to hear from either Hugo Gonzalez, obviously Amari Williams, and Max Shulga, let us know in the comments down below if you guys have any questions you want to hear from them, because we're going to try to give you some coverage from them. But I'm going to say this. I was very disappointed. I feel like the only player I was like, oh, all right, at first was Amari Williams. I really liked him. I liked what he brought to the table. However, I have turned the door on Hugo Gonzalez. I'm a big fan of Hugo now. I feel like he has a lot to prove, obviously, and I'm not going to be turned on him till he proves that for the Celtics. Same with Max Shulga, but I feel like we still got to give them a chance. Again, like you said, Daniel, these are guys who can give you something, and they're going to have time developed in Maine. And I will admit, I'm going to enjoy watching them play in Maine, and I feel like they could bring a lot to the Maine Celtics, and we could have a pretty good season for the Maine Celtics this year. I feel like between those three, you're going to see them a lot, and we could potentially be competitive in Maine. So, but do you have any final thoughts on those players or anything regarding the news today on episode 53 presented by Celtics Talk Weekly?
No, I think we covered everything. Great picks by the Celtics. VJ Edgecombe, Cooper Flag, really big guys. Everybody else but the Nets had a good draft. I think
Pelicans were questionable too.
Pelicans are questionable
For next year.
with the trades as well. Like I don't know how we're gonna see Jordan Poole as a Pelican. I don't know how that's gonna work with Zion. It's gonna be a weird next season for some teams, but a really big season for some other teams. And like you mentioned, OKC got to be on the watch out for those contracts and see what happens in the next coming years. But I think Thomas Sober for them was a good pick as well.
Yeah.
So I'll be a little bit excited about that. But yeah, after next season, we might see a different OKC team. But yeah, other than that, every team had a good trade except for the Nets again. Next season is going to be really exciting.
Yeah. No, I completely agree with you right there. I'm going to be excited to see what's next to come with the Celtics. Obviously, there's going to be some news. I don't think Brad's done yet. Not George's. Sorry, I got me right there with that one. But George Niang could potentially be a name that could be on the move for the Celtics. Who knows? But we will give you that breaking news right away. So with that being said, that's going to do it for the show. Everyone, thank you guys again so much for watching. We will see you guys next time for the next one. Thank you again. Make sure to like and subscribe and turn on post notifications to be notified every time we upload, because we're going to give you breaking news. We're going to keep you guys in the loop all off season. So we will see you guys again with the next one. Thank you guys for watching. Peace, guys.